Greetings and welcome to the daily coverage of the T20 Cricket World Cup 2021. In our daily posting, we cover the games that took place during the day, and we review how they impacted the points table, which teams are ahead, which teams are sort of falling behind. We cover the major milestones in the games that took place that day, and we cover the players, of course, who were the stars. We also covered the next games which are scheduled for the following day, just to figure out how they would impact, which teams are ahead on the points table, which teams have already qualified perhaps for the next round, which is the semifinals, and which teams are falling behind, and what does it take for each team to be able to qualify. So clearly, the best part of the World Cup is not just to see our favorite stars in action, all at one location, every team playing every other team within the confines of the group perhaps, but to see them in action, but also to figure out all the combinations in terms of how well your team is doing in relation to the other teams within the group, and try to figure out the odds and the possibilities of how your team would make it to the next round. So we try to make it exciting, to keep it exciting. Cricket, of course, is a very exciting game. Millions of us follow it all over the world. And the World Cup is where it all comes together and we all share our enthusiasm. So today's games are South Africa versus Sri Lanka from Group 1, and also from Group 1, England versus Australia. So if you look at the points table just before the games, here's the points table for Group 1. England and Australia are on top of the leaderboard with 4 points apiece. They both have played 2 matches and they've won them both. South Africa and Sri Lanka, they both played 2 matches, won 1, lost 1. So they both have got 2 points apiece. Now, clearly, it's not a must-win game for either of the 4 teams. No matter what the outcome is, they still have a pathway to go forward. But the idea of today's games are important because they will sort of strengthen their positions on the leaderboard. So with that, let's go ahead and start what happened during the game. Let's see what happened in the first game, South Africa versus Sri Lanka. Let's bring up the scoreboard. If you were to download the spreadsheet that I'm using here, you can go ahead and view the links, and all the scorecards are available within the spreadsheet. So, South Africa versus Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka batted first, and they really couldn't. If you look at the scorecard, nobody could get the better of the South African bowlers. With the exception of Nisanka, the opener, nobody else. Just one double score 21, one double score 11, double digit. Otherwise, they all fell into single digits. Just some flurry of scores at the end. But they still always kept the scoring at under 7 runs and over, and the final run rate was 7.1 runs and over. They were all out for 142 on the last ball of the last over. So the challenge for South Africa was 143. Again, given how the World Cup, the recent matches have been, a decent, respectable score, by no means a safe score for any team to feel confident about. And again, against a very strong batting team, Sri Lanka had the work cut out for them. South Africa began cautiously. They were not focusing on scoring runs, but rather they were focusing on saving the wickets. So if you look at the scorecard, no batsman was scoring at a breakneck speed pace. They were, in fact, in 15 overs, they reached 96, scoring at 6.6 runs an over, just below the required run rate. But they kept it interesting. They kept wickets in hand, and also in the last 5 overs, they needed 47 runs, 9.4 runs an over, with wickets in hand. Things were clearly under their control. The next 2 overs, they scored 16 runs. So the target now is 35 in 3 overs. Doable, but again, one over could make it go either way. And then comes the Harasinga de Silva, who had earlier dismissed Markram on the last ball of his third over, the leg spinner. He came in to bowl his final over. The very first ball, he gets a very well set Bavuma for 46, the highest scoring batsman for South Africa. The very next ball, he gets Pretorius. First ball, and he completes a hat-trick, the 24th hat-trick in T20 internationals. And in the rest of his spell, he completes gives away a leg by 2 runs, and 1 run. So a total of 6 runs he conceded in that over. So the target now was 29 runs to win in 2 overs, getting really difficult. But the best thing that was going for South Africa was that Miller was on the crease, and Miller is one of the best 6 hitting batsmen they have. Not just them, but I think all over the world, he would rank in the top ratings almost any ranking system. In the 19th over, they scored 10 runs, which means the last over, 19 runs to win. Not an easy task for anyone, but when Miller is in there, then you can expect some firecrackers. Rabata scores a single on the first delivery. Miller on strike, 6-6-1, gives it back to Rabata. He hits the boundary, and it's all over with a ball to spare. Again, it was a very close game, not by when you look at the scores here, but close and competitive game. But one would make an argument that the better team prevailed, and South Africa did play well for the whole game. And at the end of the day, they had a very crucial victory under the belt. So let's now look at the second game before we look at the point table again. England versus Australia. So one would think that it's a game between two equals. Again, any team could be slightly ahead of the other at any given point in time, but given the overall strength of the two teams, the depth of the bench strength and the depth of the coverage, one could make an argument justifiably that these are two equal teams. They were not equal today. They were far from equal today. Australia, they batted first, and they had no answer to any of the English pacers or the spinners. In the first 6 overs, and they scored 21 for 3. They kept losing wickets. They just couldn't recover. In fact, throughout their inning, their projected score was 110. There was some flurry of runs towards the end, some hitting, and they were able to get to 125, and they were all out on the last ball of the last over. So 125 all out, a target for England, and England has been clinical. England has been outstanding in this World Cup, and today was no exception. Their required run rate was 6.2 and over. England said to hell with that. They were scoring at more than 10 runs and over, and they got to the target in 11 overs with a lot to spare. Either they had to catch a train, or they had to prove a point that they are not just the best team or the most dominant team, but they are the most dominant team by a long margin. So they clearly deserve to win. In fact, not just today. If you look at England's 3 games that they have played in this World Cup so far against West Indies. West Indies batted first, 55 all out. England got the target in 8.2 overs, scoring at 6.7, very relatively sedate 6.7 runs an over. Bangladesh, 124 for 9 in their 20 overs. England got the target in 14.1 overs, scoring at 8.89 runs an over. Against Australia today, Australia 125 all out. England got the target in 11.4 overs with 10.8 runs per over. Overall, they've scored 308 runs in 34 overs in the 3 matches, scoring at 9 runs an over. But the staggering part of this is they've lost 8 wickets. In the 3 games, they have taken 29 wickets, but they've lost 8 wickets. So they are a really dominant team. So with these 2 results, let's go ahead and take a look at the points table. So the first game, let's give it to South Africa. And the second game, let's give it to England. Okay. South Africa won the game by 4 wickets, but that's not critical. Okay, so if you look at the points table now, with the after these two games, this is what the point table looks like. England is clearly on top of the group with 6 points. Australia is and South Africa, they both have 4 points each. Sri Lanka and West Indies have 2 points each, but by virtue of their solitary victory, Bangladesh does not have any points, and they most likely will fail to qualify for the next round. Um, so England is as clearly as good. They've got even if they were to not win or not prevail in the next two games, which seems very unlikely. Even with that, England has more or less qualified because not just they've got the 6 points with the three victories, but they are so far ahead on the net run rate that no team could catch up with them. Australia still has a decent path to victory. They've got two victories. If they can get if they can get two more against Bangladesh and West Indies, then they'll definitely qualify. But even if they were to get one, it's entirely possible for South Africa or Sri Lanka or both of them to somehow to find a way to register three victories. So there could be a scenario within this team, within this group, that actually even West Indies has a possibility if they could prevail against Sri Lanka and Australia, then even West Indies could end up with 6 points. So clearly, this group is still wide open. England has more or less qualified for the next round. Between Australia, South Africa, Sri Lanka, and West Indies, there is a lot. Any of these teams could make it happen, which means that for this group, it's entirely possible for two or more teams to be equal on the points, which means that the net run rate would become a crucial factor. And there, West Indies has a huge disadvantage because they were 55 all out, and they're really like the last team in the net run rate. Australia is lagging behind South Africa and Sri Lanka. So again, the work is cut out for them. This is not yet over, but then again, given how strong they usually are, it's uh it's still open. It's still open. No, there were no games in Group Two. So again, let's take a very quick look at how things stand for Group Two. Pakistan is still on the lead with 6 points. They have more or less qualified for the next round, and the battle for the next round comes in is between the remaining teams. If you look at the games that are scheduled for the next day, Afghanistan versus Namibia and India versus New Zealand. And by the time you have the result for these two games, things will be looking a lot clearer for Group Two. Clearly, for India and New Zealand, they've both lost to Pakistan. Tomorrow there's a must-win game. The winner of the game will have a pathway to make it to the semi-final. The loser will have a really uphill task. So the assumption here is that both of these teams can go on to beat in the remaining itinerary that they have. Both the teams can go on to beat Scotland and Namibia and Afghanistan. If they're able to do that, then technically this game tomorrow becomes a quarterfinal. The winner of the game will join Pakistan on top of the leaderboard and make it to the next round. But clearly, Scotland, Namibia even could cause a surprise if they shine on any given day and overcome a major team, and that could really throw a monkey wrench on all the assumptions that we're making for Group Two. But again, cricket, anything could happen. It's a game of chance, and we'll see how things turn out. In the next couple of days, we'll be adding the net run rate in our calculator as well, because now we're really getting to a point where it's not just the points that you have on the board, but it's also your net run rate that determine how well you'll end up, how well your chances are. So let's go ahead and work out towards that as well. And also by in tomorrow's session, we'll start going over every team, and we'll try to figure out the pathway for them to make it to the next round. Clearly, we haven't had enough games so far for us to have some kind of a clear pathway. But by tomorrow, we should be in a position where we should be able to do that. Okay, so with that, we come to the end of today's episode. Thanks again for joining us, and please feel free to download the spreadsheet down below. And please join us again. We'll have a repeat of this tomorrow. We'll be covering the two games that are going to be held tomorrow: Afghanistan versus Namibia and India versus New Zealand. And we'll cover the rest of the matches as well. And again, it's all very exciting. Let's all enjoy the game. Let's all have fun. And looking forward to your contribution and to your active participation. Thanks again. Bye now.